Howdy, welcome to the Mays MasterCast. I'm your host, Ben Wiggins. I apologize for my congestion today, but we have a special treat for you content-wise. We are interviewing a rising young star in the investment community who also happens to be a current student. Joseph Escobar, born and raised in El Paso, Texas, is a senior finance major at Texas A&M. Joseph has accomplished a great deal during his time here at the university, from starting an online marketplace to becoming the president of the Aggie Investment Club to now becoming the managing partner of the Reveille Fund. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the show. After graduation, Joseph will be starting at the Jefferies Group as an investment banking analyst. Let's get into it. I'm excited for this one. We welcome Joseph Escobar to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Ben, much appreciated for inviting me.
It is our pleasure to have you here. How was your weekend?
My weekend was great. I think Saturday was definitely a time, just as any college kid would spend, with his friends and having a good time. And Sunday, I like to take as more of my Zen day. I like to wake up with a lot of sleep, have as best of a meal as I can before my week is wrecked with fast food, of course, for studying and whatnot. But I do spend a lot of time in the gym on my Sunday because I know I'm not going to be interrupted by any emails from professors or any emails from any of the organizations I'm affiliated with. So it's definitely a moment where I get to just take a pause, read a good book, want to go to bed, maybe for an hour or two, and start my Monday liking my Monday. So
yeah,
that's the way I like to
do you starch your collars yourself? Because that looks super sharp. I'm very jealous of your collar starch.
Oh, I actually bought some of those little inserts that you can put in some of my collars because, yes, after moving back, we were talking about them from El Paso. So moving back and forth, my dress shirts do get collars that are definitely wrinkled. So I had to buy some inserts so that wouldn't happen. So definitely upgrading that, especially before I graduate.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your investing career. Why did you begin investing in the first place?
Yeah. So I think the best way to start this topic is, what are some of the biggest lessons I learned while in high school, or at least before I became of age at the age of 18 to start investing in the first place? And the three lessons that I was really hammered in when I was in high school was how to save, how to avoid unnecessary debt, but then also to invest early. And I heard these lessons all the time when I was a high school student. And I think that would be best described through my first class, where a project after the class. My high school was actually very good at teaching personal finances. I hear a lot from adults. They never learned how to file taxes. They never learned how to apply for a mortgage or find a job. And so my high school actually did a very good job at that.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Coronado High School in El Paso, Texas. So pretty big 6A school. They actually do spend a pretty good effort to hire some great teachers there.
Okay.
And there was a class where the project was to essentially budget a lower income household family's finances, in which we were to figure out what expenses go toward food, mortgage or rent, child daycare, all those little nitty gritty things. And it was a really eye-opening experience to understand how important it is to budget and how easy it can be to let your personal finances get away from you. So that was like the first lesson. I think that's what I tell every one of my students, is that keep your household in order before you think about investing, because I see a lot of students try to use investing to recruit other bad habits, like bad spending habits or bad, maybe bad saving habits, right? So that's the first lesson I tell. Keep your house in order in terms of savings and credit card debt before start investing, because when you do that, you have a better psychology and environment, right? Because I believe that it's not really about education, or maybe past experience. I really think it's about psychology and environment, right? Are you surrounding yourself with people that are more disciplined, and you have the psychology and, stability in mind to start investing? So I had to establish that very first, because I kind of misstepped on that. So when I first started investing, I had woken up as soon as the bell rang, so 7:30 a.m. and Mountain Standard Time, and my eyes were glued to the screen, and I was looking if I made or lost money that day. And it was a really bad habit, and I was able to break out of that soon. And that's actually why I think kids coming out of high school should start investing, so they get out of those bad habits of investing out of emotion, and so that they learn, once maybe they're my age, they really don't care too much the day-to-day movements. They're more cared about the
17 times a day.
Right. Or checking between bathroom breaks, like where it is or not. Sometimes I go entire days without looking at it. And, it really doesn't matter how much I look at it. It's the actual research and thesis that I bring with any investment I have. But I guess the last thing I'll say to that is the second teacher that really inspired me most was actually a teacher that got fired for teaching an interesting lesson in the class, which the class was supposed to be a macroeconomics class, right? So big macro economics theory, right? So Federal Reserve this, Federal Reserve that, central banks this. And he said, scratch all that. He taught us that for a month and said, I'm going to teach you how to file tax reports, or tax returns, file, budget your own, expenses, how to apply for a job, how to apply for a mortgage. And then my last project was how to build a portfolio, which that was the most interesting. And I was definitely so enthralled by it. I almost forgot about every other class when it came to that project. And after that class, I got out that the teacher wasn't on the curriculum and he proceeded to get fired. Not saying that was a good thing, but it was definitely a great thing in terms of my personal development because he gave me the confidence again to come at any investment that I come with, whether it's a Reveille Fund or my own personal portfolio, with a lot more conviction, which is, I think, another pillar of investing, which I think students need to have is conviction and of any idea they have.
Right. And from there, tell us about your process in coming to Texas A&M.
Absolutely. So a little bit backtrack. So I was an avid baseball player. So it really was a plan for me to go play baseball in college. And, I would say that most of my time spent in my childhood was in school and then baseball. That was pretty much it. There was nothing very much packing up my weekends other than baseball. And so when I got to my senior year, I was traveling and on a lot of travel teams in terms of, colleges actually, looking at me and keeping track of me. And so it got to that summer before I came here that I was really, really split between going to baseball, my life's passion, and then, of course, going to a school academically that I truly loved. Sure. And I would say that where my interest in Texas A&M was sparked was when an individual from Mays actually flew down from College Station to El Paso. And interesting enough is that he flew down and had dinner at a specific restaurant that really only El Pasoans really know is good. And so I really know that he spent the time and energy to really look into this restaurant. And so after the dinner, along with two other prospective students, he kind of brought me aside and really talked about all the programs at Mays and what they have to offer. And really, I guess, the culture of leadership and the culture of service that almost every student tries to embody. And this is something that really inspired me because as, I was looking for that sort of culture and something that wouldn't be so, I guess, alien to me, from far away. That's something that really appealed to me. And as soon as I learned about Aggies on Wall Street, which is a really great undergraduate program that prepares students to enter the field of investment banking and private equity, I was ready to say, "Where's my ticket? Where's my airplane ticket to College Station?" And from there, I really didn't look back. And that happened to be, again, only about maybe 1.5 months before coming to College Station. And this is when I was still traveling and stuff like that to try out for colleges. So it really was that exact meeting where I knew exactly. And of course, coming to visit here after that visit was an absolute amazing experience. And I really haven't looked back since then.
And then it was eventually on to the Reveille Fund. How did that fund get started?
Yeah. So let me backtrack here. So of last year, 2020 comes around. I'm the vice president of the Aggie Investment Club, and along with my president and other officers, we all get together at I don't remember if it was a dinner or coffee. We get together and say, why is there not a more prestigious, I guess, student managed investment fund just like at other colleges that bring in very bright students, that bring in great alumni as our advisory board, and that ultimately really push us in terms of having a better reputation amongst banks, other investment management firms. And so we decided on our own to really plan this out through the Aggie Investment Club. So on our own, not really affiliated with Mays. And so we looked towards sources of cash and sources of mentors, right? And so we approached the Texas A&M Foundation and then kind of had some slip ups and we're kind of running into walls everywhere. So one of us came up with the idea to approach Mr. Britt Harris himself, CEO of UTIMCO, and to see what he had to say. And so none of us thought he would actually reply to our email because he's such a busy man with a lot of high priorities. And so once he was able to, reach out to us and schedule a meeting, that was, we were grateful just for that opportunity itself.
Sure.
And so once we get in the meeting, he starts, pounding us with questions and really getting to understand if we really understand what we're trying to do here and, the responsibility that comes along with doing something like this. And so then, that call goes on for about an hour and a half. A month later, we hear back from executive professor here at Texas A&M saying that, after that meeting, Britt Harris would like to set up a student managed investment fund, but not through the Aggie Investment Club, instead as part of a Mays class. And originally we were looking for about $100,000, for something like that. That's really where student managed funds start. But he said that he would like to set aside $7.5 million for a fundamentals fund of that size. Again, when you take a look at the top 15 student managed funds, they tend to be, I think the lowest is about 8 million. I think it gets all the way up to 40 million. So just by setting aside that cash for a student managed investment fund automatically puts us in the top 15. So I think that was an amazing, amazing time because it was definitely a time where it was very rough and we spent a lot of time. We just didn't know if it was going to amount to anything. We put together, a prospectus of what the fund would look like. And as of last semester, as of January, we were given the cash and it was, obviously put into an investment account. And since then, and I won't talk too much about the performance and stuff like that, but we did surpass the $9 million mark in terms of AUM. And we continue to keep operating as if we're a real savvy startup that, moving fast and breaking things. So that is really how, I guess, the sequence of events goes from my side, of a student side, as much as I know.
What do you think motivated the choice? So 7.5 million puts you in the top 15, you're moving up. And did you talk to Britt at all about his motivation for this, aside from being able to compete with the best of the best? What went into that decision? How did he think about it?
Yeah, so I wish I could. And this is actually going to be my inspiration to ask him one of these days for his real motivation behind it. Because, this is almost a year ago coming up to it. Actually more than a year ago. And I would say that the biggest thing is education and hands-on experience. I think there's almost nothing comparable in terms of students that wanting to pursue an investing role. This is as close as you can really get to it, right? Is taking your own research, really pitching an idea to a class of senior portfolio managers and portfolio managers,
right?
And having the ability to really see your idea come into reality, in real dollars. And I think that's what Britt understood has taken place at other large institutions across the nation. And I think he saw that vision for Texas A&M, but also I have to say for the little school in Austin, or the University of Texas, he also did see that vision for them and the idea for them to also compete with us in terms of sending them money as well. And that's, I guess, also the second, I guess, pillar of this motivation was the idea that these two schools can collaborate, not only in terms of a friendly competition, but also amongst professors and students to share ideas. The UT's MBA fund seems to have a lot of experience under the belt, which we are attempting to learn from, and they're very much willing to show us their books and show us, what they've learned in terms of good experiences, bad experiences. But they're also learning from us, just as a large corporation would learn from a startup, correct?
Sure.
What's working for us just as we start, what's working for us in terms of how we're starting from the absolute grassroots. And I think that dynamic is absolutely beautiful. And I think it brings together a whole lot of great opportunities for us students to talk to their students as well as our professors to both collaborate. And I think that is exactly what Britt had in mind. And he's definitely been correct up to this date. And it's only been a year. So
how do student-led funds generally stack up against professional investors? How well do these funds usually do?
Yeah. So I did particularly look into 3 student-managed investment funds. And I won't tell you which ones they are, but I did look at those that were able to provide the returns. So there's only a few that actually put out their monthly reports or annual reports on the internet.
Right.
And all of them had actually outperformed the S&P. Right?
Okay.
And so that's an interesting fact, right? And they actually outperformed by at least 100 basis points. We typical terminology, so about 1%. But there's another statistic out there that the average hedge fund has not outperformed the S&P 500, which is an index of the 500 largest or tend to be largest publicly traded companies in the U.S. Haven't beaten that index since 2010, the average. And there's a lot of averages that can be thrown out there, but the general average for the past 11 years, hedge funds tend to not beat it. And another question is, how many unpaid professional investors have beat the S&P? And the answer to that is probably none. And us students not having maybe that profit incentive, we do have that education incentive and a little bit of a competition incentive.
Sure, and it's a great resume.
Absolutely, and I think that's I guess the third point of it, right? Because when you talk about types of careers that students try to pursue, they tend to be careers in which we do deep analysis into companies. And so in almost every single interview up until getting to the Reveille Fund, I've always been asked, oh, what's the Reveille Fund? And I, therefore explain, and they say, okay, pitch me a stock or pitch me an idea that you pitched. And yes, I subsequently in the interview send them my write up for the stock, and they definitely like it. And ever since then, I think almost every single interview, they've definitely looked into it and thought it was a great idea. And so that's just another experience. And I've also heard this from other students that they're also sending in their stock write ups for interviewers and things like that. And that's definitely, I guess, the ultimate goal of a student managed fund is to provide all those things. And in terms of trying to outperform the S&P, that's almost everyone's goal. Although the question of how to do that is still an enigma, because you have to, I guess, pick several investments that are going to outperform. And then you also have to manage, students coming in and out. So that's maybe a disadvantage that student managed investment funds have is turnover, right? So you might have employees at a typical hedge fund stay there for years on end, where students really stay there longest maybe a year in terms of if it's a class or not.
Sure.
So I guess there's definitely advantages and disadvantages, but I would be remiss to say that UTIMCO is just going to say, okay, let's just take all of our money in hedge funds and scratch it and put it into student managed funds. I don't think that's definitely an idea, but it's definitely in the mind and right objective of UTIMCO to serve its constituents and institutions that it looks to fund.
Can I ask how you guys are doing relative to the Longhorn Fund?
Yeah, so we actually tend to keep that under wraps, but I would say that we were actually both back and forth. We both have had pretty interesting down months this year, and I think them in the beginning of the year, there was a point where they overstepped their bounds in terms of betting too much in the technology sector. And for us, we had a very big problem with not more closely looking at managing our fund when the school year started. Just as that June month hit, we had a lot of positions that had double-digit green returns and had actually flown south to double-digit losses.
Red returns?
Yes, percentage losses, yes. And
right.
So I think that was two missteps, I guess they made, and one misstep we made. And I think, again, we both, look like are kind of learning from each other, because one thing that we established is a strong ability to make sure that we have the right thesis on our sector allocation. So where we allocate in terms of industrial companies, information technology, energy companies, right? And we established that very, very soon, because that's how we were essentially structured, right? By UTIMCO. And we've learned from them how to manage on a month-to-month basis, or on even a day-to-day basis, where our portfolio stands, so that we're not taking a month to decide what to trade and not to trade. We could take maybe 3 days to figure out if we need to trade out of something or not. And again, that just goes back to the great collaboration that Britt Harris had in mind, I assume.
That's great. You are doing a heck of a lot. How do you decide which opportunities to say no to?
That's a very good question, because I have had to say no to a whole lot, and no to a whole lot in terms of, I wish I was maybe 3 or 4 different people that I can really go hard on maybe one thing and really be an all-star at it. But I would say the way that I say no is if my future self would look back at my current self and would say, you know what, if you don't do this, you're most likely going to regret it. And I think from that perspective, and just as I've thought about that perspective with job opportunities, internship opportunities, should I go for this internship in New York as opposed to Houston, which was a big decision for me when it came to recruiting. Now,
which did you choose?
I chose New York, and to my I wouldn't say dismay, but to my startling realization, I really knew I wanted to be back in Texas. I really thought that after going up there and really experiencing what I experienced, I thought that I just had this itch and this gut feeling that I knew that a couple firms down in Texas were going to provide, I guess, a culture that most closely resembled mine. My personality. And I think that's the most important thing. And it's a kind of a big misconception, right? Because a lot of students go pursue jobs, pursue opportunities for the sole sake of prestige, or the title of the firm, or the title of the position. And I think that's definitely the wrong way to go about it. Anything right now in college, right? I think the best thing to do is it something that aligns closely with your personality? Is it something that you're going to like to be doing on a Sunday night or a Monday morning when you're tired and you're not really, your 50% mental capacity? Is it something that you're going to like doing? And I think that's what matters above all company name, title, anything. And that's also, I guess, my second pillar that I kind of think about is those questions in terms of what to say no to. Am I going for it for the title and prestige and the clout, as you will, as opposed to maybe bigger life lessons that I might learn from it, and if it's really a fit in terms of culture and my personality.
That's really interesting. Yeah, culture fit and core value fit, I think, are kind of the next frontiers in the business world and probably in the investment world as well.
Oh yeah.
What else do you think our audience would want to know about you? You're a very interesting guy.
No, it actually follows that last point, what I've had to say no to. And it's actually been in being involved with a lot more startups. So I have been approached and have, politely declined 2 other startups that approached me and wanted me to be an operating partner or co-founder with them, as they know I've had experience with pitching in terms of pitching to angel investors and at pitch competitions, but also how to, I guess, grow organically a company out of essentially nothing.
Sure. We sat next to each other in some of those lectures.
Yes, absolutely. And so one of the things I've said yes to for a long time is my own startup, Cardstock Exchange, which is a online marketplace for sports trading cards, which is looking to disrupt larger players in the space that tend to really put a lot of new entrants at a disadvantage when it comes to new collectors wanting to get into space, and really letting only big top collectors kind of dominate the space. And so we really have been working hard, and it took us about 2 years to actually get a live marketplace with a functioning back end. And we still operating today. So we went live as of July, and that has been a pet project of mine since my freshman year. And I think that has been an opportunity where I've learned a whole lot about how to manage an organization in general. So all that I learned from Cardstock Exchange, I've implemented to running the Aggie Investment Club, as well as establishing the Reveille Fund. I was really pivotal in setting up almost everything in terms of recruiting and how to structure the fund and what to go into first in terms of getting that cash in January. And so I think that experience with Cardstock Exchange has really led me to know how to, I guess, speak publicly, manage people, and really think critically about how to just start an organization from scratch, from nothing, with a blank piece of paper.
Sure. It's a chaotic process, the early startup life, and it's something I'm deeply uncomfortable with. I don't thrive very well in that environment. I do much better once things are a little farther down the road.
No, and it's definitely just dependent on the person, right? I really think that there's some individuals that I personally met networking, representing Cardstock Exchange, where that's all they can do. It's just as soon as they're born, it seems like that is all they can do. They could probably never, walk into an office working for someone else. It's like they always have to be working for themselves, doing their own thing, just because they're just so obsessed about what their ultimate goal is in life, and they know that from and it's maybe puts a lot of pressure on others to find that out. But I think that should never be the case. I think I've learned is that I think I have not figured it out all yet. Only 21, a lot of years in front of me. And I think that when that time comes, I'll for sure know, but I also remember not to be put in a position where I'm pressured by others that might know what they want to do very well. And I just keep that in mind every time I go to these networking events and I hear all these, young kids doing this and this and this. I make sure to keep level headed and make sure that, I'm on my own path. I'm going at my own speed, and whatever I'm doing right now with all that I'm doing with Reveille Fund, the Aggie Investment Club, and Cardstock Exchange, I think I'm going at the right pace. But I definitely think everyone should just, be more aware of, what their strengths and weaknesses are.
Well said.
Yep.
Joseph, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time today.
Ben, I'm so grateful for this chance to speak to you. Thank you again.
Thanks for joining us today for the discussion with Joseph. Our first 2 takeaways are both devoted to the concept of student-run investment. The first is the Reveille Fund and the idea that student-managed investment funds run up to $40 million. This sounds to me like, 1, a fascinating education and recruitment tool, but 2, an excellent investment tool, as evidenced by our second takeaway, the idea that publicly reporting student-managed investment funds have outperformed the S&P in recent years. Investment is a constantly shifting landscape, and it's a great idea to access the capabilities of younger, more nimble minds. It's working. Smart move. Our third takeaway is quality of fit for employment opportunities from a core values perspective, from a culture perspective. Joseph mentioned this in his evaluation of internships after the fact, but it doesn't just apply to internships. It applies to all opportunities and really all relationships. If there isn't a fit on specific core values and specific culture, nothing works. And I don't just mean integrity and leadership. What's the nature of the humor you appreciate? Are you buttoned up or more casual? If there are differences, are there differences you can live with? It's one of the most crucial aspects of the courting process between a company and an employee, even between two people. Fit. And now I'll close us with a Naval quote. Life hack. When you're in bed, meditate. Either you will have a deep meditation or fall asleep. Victory either way. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for watching. We appreciate your support. Drop us a like below and feel free to leave a comment if you wish. We appreciate positivity and constructive feedback. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes and bonus content. You can also take us on the road using your favorite podcast listening app. We have those linked below. If you'd like to know more about Mays Business School or our guests, visit mays.tamu.edu/podcasts. Talk with you soon.